Well, we are online. As you can see, we're having some late issues, whatever. But welcome to the Erudition Network Interactive Black History Analysis. We are experiencing a lot of weather here in Colorado, so you may see a little bit of a glitch here today. We're cutting down everything we can on our side to make sure that the internet does act right today. You know, it's funny when you stream on these channels. This is typically what starts to happen. If you are joining us, you will notice that we're using a little less channels today. StreamYard is having some issues with showing the comments from people online. So I would ask you if you're here for the live session and you may have logged into my account or maybe Tina's account to see Erudition do that way. I would ask you to go to Erudition Network page and connect through the live on that page, or you can do it through YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter. And you will be able, we should be able to see your comments. I checked the comments earlier today, tested it a couple of times, and found that we were having problems with certain accounts, but not others. And I went and asked StreamYard what was the issue. So we'll see what that problem is. I don't have too many people here tonight yet. Oh, Sean Anthony, good to see you. So you just arrived. Thank you for joining us, my son. Eric, I know you had sent me a message a moment ago. So I assume that you have joined and we just don't see it, or you will be joining. Tonight, I'm going to delay just a few moments to let people catch up with us on the program. We have a couple of things that are coming up, and I'm going to make a couple of announcements for those things because I think that they are really important and are really going to help a lot of people. We have a course coming up. I've been talking about this off and on a little bit over the last few weeks. I keep telling people that we are designing a course for people to be able to learn Black history and its fact, and not any kind of soft history or made up facts and things that we are starting to see out here. Because one of the things that troubles me a lot is this whole desire and design to push out misinformation. And I'm not going to do another show tonight talking about misinformation. I'm just going to say that, you know, I'm working really, really heavily on creating these courses so that we can do a better job of teaching the public and in teaching our families. You know, history is in school oftentimes did not include us in the most, and I mean Black people, in the most positive light. And so what I want to do, what I am doing, and I want to do, is change that narrative. So we will be releasing the Erudition Network Early World Black History course, Part 1. It will be a 7-day course um, that will walk you through um, early history and give you some things to study and to reflect on and to share with your family. You will see advertisements coming out for that next week. I'm trying to find a way to make this cost effective for our audience and people who are out here. And so you will see things on that coming out this coming week. And I hope that you will join us in promoting it and getting people fired up to learn history, real history. So that's the goal. That's the goal. That is what we're trying to do. I wanted to talk tonight internet and feed everything working with us. I want to talk tonight about this. Hold on a second. There you go. All right, so now the message to my background here. But anyway, we've been having it's unusual for us. We're under a thunderstorm watch right now. Before I came on, the internet decided that it was going to drop. So we're having those problems, but then it came back. So a little laggy, but Tita said it's raining, so we're lagging. That is true. That is true. We're also trying to make sure that, everybody not, the kids, everything. I'm back. Yeah, I saw what you said, Tina and Eric. Yeah, we're getting a lot of weather here. Things are dropping out. I got completely dropped out there for a moment. But anyway, we're gonna make it work. We're gonna do what we got to do. That's what happens. Um, it's actually been raining a lot this year, messing up live streams. It's been messing up a lot of things, but we're here, man. We're here. We'll fight through this. The weather comes in, weather goes out. It should affect the internet like it does, and it's very funny that it does, but it does. Tonight, let's just get into this. I wanted to talk about the entire. I hope you all had a great Fourth of July. Every year we get inundated with these um, posts now. Black people put out, and I'm going to say black people uh, put out these posts every year now, where about Frederick Douglass, and every year it never fails. We are um, told about Frederick Douglass and how, what is the 4th of July to the slave, and um, all of these things are put out here to discourage folks from studying, or I'm not saying studying, but commemorating July 4th. And this year was no different. Um, I noticed last year wasn't as bad, but this year it got really, really crazy, right? It got really, really crazy. I saw so many posts fly across my feed um, talking about Frederick Douglass and what to the slave is the 4th of July. And it became so um, silly to me, because in seeing these posts, I realized that a lot of people had not actually read the speech. They had not actually fully read um, the speech. So what they were doing is they were regurgitating what they thought was a complete um, denial or pushback on the 4th of July. And they never really went back and read Douglas' full speech. And I found that to be funny, because I was like, a lot of these folks out here, right? They they were so busy trying to tell all of us um, why we shouldn't celebrate the 4th of July as opposed to Juneteenth, right? And completely forgetting the fact that in that very same speech that Frederick Douglass praised, this is what I said here, praised the creators of the writers of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Folks completely forgot that, right? They didn't have any clue of that. And so they were sitting here all throughout yesterday, slamming and condemning and telling people that you shouldn't be celebrating this. I saw some famous people. Somebody sent me, what's that cat's name, Boosie or whatever, talking about, he needed to really be educated on this, right? And I just thought that, if we don't tell our history in truth, we lie about it and we make these things up, it's foolery. It's foolery. And we got to do better with that. As I often keep saying on this show, we got to do better with that. Yeah, these books are sitting all over my desk almost all the time. And you can read and read and read and read. But if you don't vet what you're reading, and people don't understand, I tell you to read something, I tell you to read it because I want you to be able to vet it yourself. Not base it on what Eddie is saying, only what Eddie is teaching you or saying. I want you to vet it yourself. When we go through and look at what Douglass was saying, right? He wrote, and I'm going to try to share a piece of my screen here. So we can do a really good job here of showing you what I'm talking about. So now I'm not just talking at you. Moment here. Because that's another issue that I'm seeing. I'm not here to talk at you. I want you to, for some reason, that's not showing up. But I want you to be able to sit here and figure these things out on your own too. And I don't want people lying to you. Boy, this weather is really acting crazy. It's limiting everything that I'm trying to do on here, but making everything very slow. I apologize for that. How all of that's working out today. But I am going to try. Okay. I think I got something here. All right. So let's look at this and try to see if we can read it together here. There we go. All right. So you'll see right here where it says that Douglas speech, right? He also, if I'm not going to read it all verbatim, but you hear, as you look through this, you see that Douglas called them peace men, right? They prefer revolution to peaceful submission to bondage. You see how he says I am not wanting in respect to the fathers of this republic. This is in the same speech. They were great men too, great enough to give fame to a great age. They loved their country better than their own pride interests. Now, history shows you that some of that is not necessarily true. But I want to state this because we have to date Frederick Douglass' speech. We have to date that speech. We have to understand that when Douglas gave that speech, he was talking about a particular time in which blacks were still enslaved. So the question of what is the 4th of July to the slave was a very valid question. It was a valid question because it was truthful. What does it mean? Right? What does it mean to them if they are denied rights? He was also talking from the point that when he gave the speech in 1852, right, that in 1850 they had enacted the Fugitive Slave Act. So people were being allowed to come north and take freemen to the South and claim that they were slaves. When you post these remarks or these thoughts, right, I say, just understand what you're talking about. Understand the history behind it. It was never Douglas's desire to demean those who had fought or those who did want to have freedom for blacks. All he simply said is, how can I celebrate freedom when my brothers and sisters are still not free and laws are being written to keep them in bondage? Anathema to what the actual founding fathers supposedly said this country should be about. That's what he was saying. And because we don't accept that, we read these speeches with this identifier that, okay, that means that nobody should be celebrating, no black person, no children of the slave should ever celebrate the 4th of July. That is lunacy. There's lunacy that completely takes away from the men and women who fought in the Revolutionary War, who fought to allow America to be America. If you were to go to my actual Facebook page, right, I put on there every year, right? I create this banner to put on every year, right, to honor those men and women who fought in the Revolutionary War. And I gave just a few of them. William Salem, Salem Poor, Skippy Brown. Those are just a few. People who fought on Bunker Hill. Those who put their lives on the line to be free. They were promised freedom, fighting for the liberty of America. And many of them were freed. But we take away from that when we do not commemorate those men and women like Francis, who helped to make sure that George Washington wasn't poisoned. We take away from the poets like Phyllis Wheatley, who wrote so much about the revolution. We forget these people. And we say, well, what does it mean to us? But they are a part of us. So hopefully next year, when you get ready to celebrate, right, the 4th of July, you think about these things. You won't be so quick to say, well, I don't want to celebrate this because all my people were free. Here's a reminder to you. For those of you who say celebrate Juneteenth and not July 4th, all your people weren't freed after Juneteenth. It was slavery by another name. So if we can't appreciate those who served, those who gave during those times, we are wrong. And we, again, I keep saying this, let's do better. You know, I have been, I make no bones about it to you all. I am a Christian. I have been very moved lately because I really feel that we are in a position, in a place where God is trying really hard to get our attention. The weather is crazy. The world has been as hottest since the recording of temperature. It is bad out here. We had multiple shootings over the last holiday. People dying. And yet, we seem to still not get our acts together and the understanding of fellowship, friendship, and love. You know, I say the thing about Christianity because, you know, Jesus told us to love one another. Almost every religion in this world, there is adapted from the idea of love, caring, empathy, desire to have empathy and care, not sympathy for each other, and to work with each other to have a better understanding. And we seem to be failing that. We go for the path, I always tell my sons, the path of least resistance. We go for the things that seem to be easy to do. The lies, right? There was a young man I was on the other day, and the young man came on and he lied. And what's funny is the young man knew that he was lying. He knew that he was lying. And his response on social media was, when he was found to be lying, was that, well, better to have the lie than the truth if it makes you feel good. That's what we're dealing with here. It's okay to lie. It's okay to repress. It's okay not to do, talk, and say the things that we should, because we want to be able to go with the groupthink and do what everybody else is doing. I had told you all recently that the way we look at things in this country is so much different. Cultures look at things differently. You know, liberty for and freedom for people of color has a different meaning than that for people, for others, for whites. It's not to be racist. It's just to call a thing what it is. And it has always been that way. Liberty to people of color and freedom is what brings people over here. It is what the revolution, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, it is what is kind of at the heart of that. All men want to be free, free to live, free to love, free to learn, worship. They want those things. But what tends to happen is that we fall into this trap. We fall into this trap of how we see other people. We have touched this country in ways that aren't always recognized, that aren't always loved. I told you earlier, when I'm designing this course, I was sitting here and I was saying to myself, we can't just make a course that appeals to only Black people. Because what has happened is they have separated us. They have made us into different categories. And we have to address that. Last week, I spent a lot of time going into evolution and Darwinism and talking to you about the men and who manipulated that and told a story, a farcical story of who we are. Eric, we still aren't free. The prison industrial complex enslaves our people to work for next to nothing. That is true. But this has always been the case. Even when the Constitution, even when we were freed by the Constitution, it showed you that there was a workaround. Why was that workaround in there? You know the history of it. You know that at the time it was proposed to put women in there. If you know the history of it, it was proposed that slavery should not exist in any capacity. But even those who were supposed the friend of the slave had implicit biases and bigotry towards Blacks and felt that they could not be trusted with this new freedom. So there had to be a way to keep them controlled. So if the bad ones got out of control, we'll put them back in jail and then we'll make slaves of them again. That is why you can be basically a slave in prison. That is why. I do agree. We don't need private prisons. What we need is education. What we need is a lot of the time when you look, Eric, and you look at criminality in this country, it comes from people who have been in some way held down by society. That's what it is. You know, I was joking yesterday that everybody wants to talk about this existential thing, right? If you look at Disney movies, it's all this existential. It's so much of that. But no one asks the question about the existential question about how to better care for man. Why we hate in the way that we do. So you can go read your Kierkegaard, your Sartre, your Nietzsche, right? You can go read all of that, and you can study and teach in schools and teach the philosophy. But are you living to actually ask the question? It's as if what we're saying is, hey, you know what? Let's admit that the evil is happening, but let's do nothing to change it. Let's do nothing to change it. And it becomes very, very disheartening Tina. I believe the more it's made clear how Americans are united, America can progress. I like to believe that too. I like to believe that. I really do. But then I have to have a Baldwin thought here, right? I would love to believe what you wrote here. And I do everything in my power to try to make that a reality. But as Baldwin was saying one time in an interview, it's the evidence. It's the evidence that they show us every day that things aren't getting better. And if anything, they're getting worse. Because we have bamboozled ourselves, Malcolm said, into this lie and this belief that we don't have to necessarily fight. Just be loud, scream, holler, say the name of the people who've been hurt, but not actually have a movement, not actually look and hold America, as Dr. King said, to its promise. As he said, and I paraphrase, it would be easy to allow America off the hook and say that it doesn't owe you anything. Reparations, fair treatment, right? Schooling, it doesn't owe you anything. But that is not what America was designed. That's not the promise of America. From the Declaration of Independence to our very Constitution, to any of the state constitutions, right? It consistently tells us that citizens have rights under the law and protection under the law. But the more we lie about it, the more we consistently try to change these things to set America back 50 to 60 years. That's our problem. And so I like to believe that the more we talk about being united, the better we'll be. But it seems like some Americans are uniting under one side and choosing to say, this is our America. You're only a part of it because we allow you to be a part of it. Taking away from your ancestors fighting to make this place a reality. Building of the buildings and railroads, of the farm, the crops, slaving in cotton fields as sharecroppers, the inventions, the revolutions, the change in political thought. Like none of that is ours. And that's the problem. Instead of changing things, the excuse to blame the system is the kids kicked through the generation of avoid and things. Well, here's the thing, Tina. There is a system. We don't like to talk about it. A lot of us don't like to face it. And because we don't face it, it continues. The machinations of it continue. The bigots built a system. They built a system. They built a system that runs their cities, their state, federal legislations. They built the system. And we have to fight against that system every day. But the system also, like with anything, has propaganda. Propaganda that allows people to follow things that are against their best interests every day. Every day. And it's a sad situation, but it happens. Folks go against what would be better for their families, for their communities. You look at affirmative action right now. We know for a fact that there is still a great racial and bigoted divide in this country. We know that over the last 15 years, it has gotten worse. In many ways, worse than it was um, back in the 60s, politically, not physically, because we don't accept that physicality of it. We're not admitting to the sundown towns in the country, as I talked a couple of weeks ago. We're not admitting to the repression in the workforce. The idea that people can't get hired or people are being fired in jobs that they are highly qualified for and educated for by people who don't have the same level of education as they do. But the difference is color. To such a point that when all the riots were happening a few years ago, businesses and jobs, right, started to have diversity training in their companies, because boards didn't want to admonish the fact that there were race problems in some of these large companies, and that people who were qualified were being rooted out of these companies for minute issues such as disability, such as how they braided or combed their hair. We had to take that to the Supreme Court. This is how bad it's gotten. Supervisors who actively participated in racist comments on social media, people getting caught, and only by getting caught do we realize, oh my God, this person is a bigot. And then by definition of what they do, are racist, because they're using their power to remove or hinder someone. Yes, the system is out here, Eric. About what I've been reading, affirmative action mainly benefited white women. I disagree with that, Eric. I disagree, but I understand where the logic of that comes from. Right? I believe that what happened was that as we started to as blacks got rights, it opened the door for women of all colors and creeds. But let's be really honest. The forerunners of it were women. It is almost a couple of weeks ago, I did a whole program talking about separatists and talking about their connection to civil rights, to the movement of civil rights, and how they treated I.B. Wells and how they treated African Americans, because a lot of the separatists had been abolitionists. But upon the abolition of slavery and the allowance of black men were given the vote over women, before women, how they showed their racist sides. How people like venerated leaders like Elizabeth Cady Stanton said that she would not stand to be have the laws imposed on her by the jigaboo, by the Sambo. How during women's marches, even though there were a lot of black women who helped in alignment with the separatist movement, how they pushed them aside and told them that they could march. Notably, Ida B. Wells. And how even after that, going into and to the modern age, in World War I, World War II, how black women, whereas white women were allowed to go work in factories and do things, black women were marginalized and told that they could not do the same things. How, as we look at the legislation in 1968, right, and how that opened up a lot more doors for women to be able to join the workforce, and how white women ran with that. Black women were told what during those days? That they could not have a man in the house if they couldn't find a job and they were on public assistance. And now we are at a point again, whereas you look through what's been happening, the door opened for everyone, but more so than that for white women. However, the reason that I disagree with you, Eric, is because what ended up happening is that Black women are the most educated people in the United States. That's by any study, core statistic that you go look at. They have the most undergraduate degrees, graduate degrees. They took the ball and they ran with it. They went to school while their husbands, a lot of them, worked jobs. Case after case of that. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that was a betterment for the family. But now here rises the problem. Because these Black women went to school and got into these areas of higher education, they used affirmative action to get educated, but then they got into the business and were denied jobs. But here's the thing with education, a lot of these schools, the legacy. So because my parent went to this college, I have a better opportunity to go into that college and get educated myself as a legacy. If you really look at affirmative action, is designed to stop that. To stop the idea of these people getting in school, because once that one got in, that allowed all of the others to get in. Susan got into Harvard. Now Susan's 5 kids all go to Harvard. Is the reason why it's so much to this, to that comment that you got. It's the reason why businesses now are doing internal education. They're hiring and mentoring and apprenticing their people to learn within their own company, because they don't want to give as much value to degrees that people have earned and have gone in debt for. But the other part of that is, I've seen this personally, is people who go into these jobs with all this education and knowledge and wherewithal and drive, and they work under people who don't have it. But what they do have is a good old boy system. What they do have is color, where they're given benefit of the doubt. Affirmative action allows people the opportunity that legacy normally affords all cultures. Yeah, but that's not true. African Americans do have a legacy, and we do use legacy. Getting rid of affirmative action may be one of the first steps that supports the need for reparations, so we don't need things like affirmative action. No, I disagree. Listen, let's not conflate both, because here's the thing: affirmative action is needed. Affirmative action assures that people are treated fairly. Affirmative action didn't boost a person above you who wasn't qualified. It just meant that my SAT scores, your SAT scores had to be looked at together. And that if my scores were better than yours, it could no longer be, well, Johnny, he's from Chicago. He came from the inner city. Let's not, he doesn't have a pedigree, right? People forget that they used to have college interviews where they would sit there and ask you where you come from. What's your family background? Who's your mother and father? Your grandfather? What were they? Well, you're not really this school's, type. So what we want to do is regress and go back to that. Reparations is different. You can give me reparations, right, and allow me certain things. But affirmative action just means that it affirms that I am qualified just as much as he or she is to be considered for the position of this school. Yes, they do. But what this really comes down to, Tina, and all of you all on here, is the idea of stopping people before they have a chance to take off. Stopping them before they have a chance to take off. Affirmative action was good for the times that it was put in use. These days, I don't think it's needed because racism don't hold the same weight as it did back then. Well, I disagree with that too. I'm gonna give you an example. The fact of the matter is that a lot of the people who are going to school right now are minority. And they feel that they can go to school because they felt like they would be treated fairly. I will tell you that looking at corporate America, right? If there was no regulation to make equal opportunity regulation, you would not see as many people hired. Why do I say that? Because historically we have seen that. And when left to their own devices and no one challenges it, companies still do it. That's why companies are still being taken to court for discrimination. Because a corporation, a college, a university, these are big institutions. And if Julie decides that she doesn't want an Asian or a Black or somebody in the school because that's not her cup of tea, she needs to be held accountable. When your quotas, right? Because that's the thing everybody talks about. All a quota really is a number of people. It's not that you're trying to keep a certain amount of Blacks, certain amount of Asians. The fact of the matter is, when you are only allowing people from a certain financial background, from a certain area of the country, when you're only allowing these people into the school, then what you're doing, college is and university is about challenging knowledge from different perspectives. You're limiting and you're stovepiping those perspectives. That has never worked for us historically. That is the reason why people like Archibald Dunning, Woodrow Wilson, and other collegiate and academic were able to lie and tell people that Black people were this without you ever being exposed to these other cultures, because you lived in a stovepipe school that would allow them in. And in order for Blacks or minorities to be educated, they opened up special schools for them. That's why you have the Spelmans and the Morehouses and all of this. This is why this initially came into being. Because you couldn't get into Harvard, Yale. You could get into these white universities. And even when we integrated, even with integration, you were told you weren't welcome there. Stories of students having to be separated from their classes, sitting in other parts of the class, while the teacher allowed these thugs and idiots to threaten and attack students who were paying their money too. We forget why we placed affirmative action into place. Black men, of all of you out there, Black men, you need to be afraid. I'm going to say it just that way. Afraid of this desire to replace affirmative action. Why? Because Black women have their education, more so than even anybody else in the country. Black men, you're not there. And now they're closing the door for many of you to even be able to be considered to get there. Those of you who barely made it out of high school, barely made it out of community colleges, who said, well, I want to get my master's or my doctorate, but every time I apply for one of these colleges, they seem to reject me. And I don't know why. I'm qualified. Affirmative action gave you a legal leg to stand on. So let's not just dismiss it as things aren't as like they used to be. They're worse than they used to be. They're worse. And now we're changing up the game here, right? By saying corporations are now saying, we don't even trust what's coming out of the college. Why is that? Generations you trusted your colleges. Oh, could it be because all of these minorities now are graduating out of these universities and they're coming to find these jobs? And the people who you have in these jobs, and I'm going to tell you from personal experience, the people who you have in these jobs aren't qualified. So we walk in the door with an education, with knowledge, they feel threatened. They feel threatened. And they do everything they can administratively to remove you out of that position, to undermine what you bring to your job. It's deeper than affirmative action. I didn't want to get really into affirmative action, but it's a really good question. Action included government allowances that motivated inclusion. Without the incentive, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is people are going to go to school. I don't think that we're going to stop folks from seeking higher education. But you got to also look at this part of that, you all, where they're telling folks, they've been saying this for a while, conservatives are really on this. And I do it to an extent. Go out here and get these labor jobs. Go to trade school. Go become a plumber, an electrician, a truck driver. And for some of us, that's fine. I agree with it to a certain extent. Everybody doesn't want to go to college. Maybe you are a mechanically inclined person. You want to establish your life. I am a fan of mastery. Go and learn a skill and master it. And then let it work for you. I'm a fan of that. So I'm not dissuading for you to not go out and get a trade. But understand the gimmick on that. If you're going to go get a trade with the idea of learning the trade and one day owning your own. Don't just learn to work for somebody. We have a history of African Americans, minorities, people of color who learn trades. I paid them. There's a book sitting right on my desk right now. And I've said several times for many people to go out and get this book. It's W.B. Du Bois's Data Portraits, where he talked about visualizing Black America and how Du Bois went through several places, but this in particular, he went through Atlanta and he looked at all of the people who had got trades that were significant at the time. Whether you were a blacksmith, you were a butcher, whether you were there are a couple that are on here. I was actually looking for it. Right? Whether you were an agricultural laborer, whether you were a barber, whether you were a merchant, you worked for the community, but you made money. Right? And around 1890, right, as he was coming out of of it. I'm gonna see if I can put this up here because I don't have it digital for you all. You will notice here that that big line right there at the top that loops back around, if you see it, right? That was agricultural laborers, sharecroppers. Sharecroppers. They led the way. But you know who was the secondary biggest thing down here? If you look at it, that little spike down there, barbers. Barbers made money. Cutting folks' hairs, shaving them up. So I'm not telling you you can't be successful learning a trade. But what you want to do is own it once you learn it. And that may take some education in business. That may take you having to go take a college class. Nothing wrong with that. But we got to get better than just saying, oh, it doesn't mean anything. Affirmative action forces people to continue to be slaves because people feel they have to use that to work instead of starting their own business. I disagree, and I'm going to tell you again why I disagree. Affirmative action is not holding you back. I have worked at every level. Every level. And I'm going to tell you, I've sat in rooms with people who went to these Ivy League schools. I've sat in places that some of you all would be surprised, at tables with folks and three-letter agencies, and sat with folks who got multiple degrees in engineering. The difference is know-how. The difference is access. See, I could walk in there with all of this know-how, right? Because I've actually used this equipment. I've actually done this job, and I understand it. I learned it. But he'll walk in with his engineering degree, and automatically everybody listens to everything that he's saying. So when you can't get in that school because they won't allow you, because you don't meet their requirement, their interview status, we still see, even with affirmative action, that they're stopping certain people from going to schools. Studies have shown you, and I will put some in the chat. And the reason why the studies show you this is because now we have Blacks and people of color who are now statisticians. No more the Walter F. Wilcoxes who just make up numbers to feed white supremacy. Folks who are actually studying this stuff and saying, hey, stop, this is bad. Those are the ones who decried the Supreme Court's approach to this and said, no, we're not better. In many ways, we're worse. And now, because of the pandemic, we have a whole generation of young people who are below the standard of education, of learning in schools, across the board. But who's going to get in college? Who are you giving the benefit of the doubt to? Statistically, historically, for every Black person or person of color that got in college from affirmative action, studies show you there are 100 or more whites who got in college who were not as equally qualified. We had a case a couple of years ago where that you saw people got caught in a scheme to have folks take tests for them to be able to go to these colleges. Not because they were going to do well in the college, because obviously they would have needed the knowledge, but then there were situations put into the school to allow them to pass these classes, to people to take tests for them, people to do their stuff for them so they can graduate with an education that they did not earn. We got to look at this logically. that decrease in academic performance does not include homeschoolers. Yeah, there is a definite difference in that. But many of us don't want to homeschool. And homeschooling, ladies and gentlemen, while we get on that, because I'm right at my hour, I'm going to give you 5 more minutes. Homeschooling, ladies and gentlemen, does not just mean that they have to be at home all the time. You can send your kids to a brick and mortar school and still homeschool your kids. Learn with them. Grow with them. This affirmative action thing, as you may notice, really angers me. Because I see it for what it is. It's an attack at many different levels. And we're suffering. We're going to suffer. Racism is not dead in this country, ladies and gentlemen. Let's stop lying to ourselves. It exists. Implicit bias exists. Negative groupthink exists. Bigotry and racism exists. And when it goes unchecked, it becomes a crisis. And we're in the midst of that crisis. You could have attacked anything, but to attack affirmative action as if it's something that's horrible, but not attack the fact that you have people who are legacy and have been legacy for a century, entire families going to college and universities and perpetuating wealth. But we feel that to make things equal for people of color, oh, there's something wrong with that. Whole families. Because grandma, granddaddy, dad, mom, auntie, uncle, they've all gone to this university. They're well known. We got to do better. We got to be more logical. I have 4 people in my house right now in college. 4 people. Right? And it's what it is. And I tell my children, get your education. Because you don't have to be the best, but know what you're studying. Master what you're studying. I don't care if you're the smartest person in the room. If you know anything about me, you ain't got to be the smartest person in the room, but go out of your way not to be the dumbest. I disagree. Companies do not listen to people who don't know what they're talking about. If a black or Latino that what they're talking about, and a white person don't, they're going to listen to the. Listen, I have been in a room where white men did not know what they were talking about. White men actually almost got us killed because their ego would not allow them to admit that they did not know what they were talking about. And that this black man who knew what he was talking about, I can't acquiesce to him. And me having to demand or find a workaround to make it happen. I have a person in here right now that will tell you what I just said is absolutely true. They sat there with me and experienced it. I've had white people who say that they were for me, and when I got to do a job, turn completely against me because I had something that they didn't have with all of their degrees, knowledge, and whatever. That's what it is. But you know what saves? I went and got my degrees, right? Because I felt, and my wife will tell you, it was a piece of paper that I had to have to validate what I already knew. But if you can't get in school to get that piece of paper, what does that do for you? That lets you become marginalized based on some illogical crap. Justice Thomas benefited from affirmative action. Yes. Well, I don't listen. Justice Thomas has always been an embarrassment. To sit the seat that was once occupied by Thurgood Marshall, it is an embarrassment. I said it. Not dead, but it is not as strong. No, it is very strong. I will adamantly push against that. I deal with it every day. It is very strong. And it is stronger in a different way than it was in the 50s and the 60s. This is why we teach on this program. It is very strong. It is divisive. They're playing chess while too many of us are thinking about playing checkers. They're making moves that's going to affect us for 50 to 60 years. That is going to put this country into an apartheid system. Don't ever believe that it's not as strong as it used to be. You can put a black voice on anything, doesn't mean they represent us like it always says. That is true. I think the next show should dive deeper into the history and present affirmative action topic. Right is picking up. Yeah, right is picking up, but we're fine. What do you mean, how? I can tell you this, right? That when we are watching ourselves in this country be denied, see, here's the thing. People can't have it both ways. The conservative side can't say that there are no jobs, right? The jobs are not good jobs. The jobs that are out here are sustainable for people to be able to live. While at the same time, not allowing people to grow and fighting ways for people to grow. So you can call it evil. I will tell you, you can go look and read some books from the 1960s where white folks said the same thing. It's evil, not racist. There's never been a racist who admitted that they're racist. They'll tell you, well, I'd like to look out for my own. Racism is evil. However you moniker evil, right? Racist, sexist, ageist, it's still evil. It's the denial. And we're still seeing that. Folks are not being allowed to grow. You got a country right now that doesn't even want you. I'm on here teaching history every Thursday. That doesn't even want you to learn history because it makes people feel bad. We have to do better, man. God gave us all free will to do whatever it is that we're doing. And many of us are choosing to be repressive, to not love each other. And as I said at the beginning of the program, have no empathy for each other. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been over this hour. I thank you for joining us tonight. Please feel free to drop any other questions in here. I saw we had a lot of more people that joined us later on the broadcast. I do appreciate all of you who came in later. I hope you got something from it. If you missed the very first part, I am getting ready to drop a Black History course, and I really am looking for our audience and our friends and the people and supporters to help us and support us as we get ready to drop this course. It's important because we need to start teaching real factual history, not based on opinion, not based on somebody's fanciful thought, stuff that we can actually validate, source, and be, know that it is true. And so that will be coming, and I want you all to be on the lookout for that. You will start to see advertisements and things on that as of next week, and we will get that out there to you. And we're doing our best to try to make it affordable for everyone. Everyone. I do mean I want this course to be beneficial for everyone of all cultures, backgrounds, creeds, and whatever. So we will be doing that. But I want to say again, thank you all. Teaching Black history is illegal in Florida, or where we're still very racist. I want to thank you all again. Um, we can disagree on points, but know this: every disagreement comes from love, and it's a discussion, and that's what this interactive is supposed to be about. Please join us again next Thursday. Join Tina on her show Monday. I don't know what that crunching sound is in the back. Um, Monday, the boys on Wednesday. We're all on around the same time, which is 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Until then, we will see you on those days, and I hope that you have a great rest of your week. Oh, I did it again. I know my son's in the background. I did it again. If you want to support the Erudition Network, we have a Cash App. It's $ the Erudition Network. Anything that you support us with goes to help out with our program, our lights, our cameras, and different things that we use to be able to present this program to you. So please feel free. I often forget to put the ticker up, and I apologize for that. But I want you all to know that whatever you donate, many of some of our supporters, you have donated, and everything you donate is appreciated. It has been used for cameras. We have webcams that we use for the boys show and for me and Tina's show that help to buy those webcams, and I do really, really appreciate your support. Please continue to support us with whatever seed of love that you choose to provide. All right. I put that out there because I often forget. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, have a good one, and we will be seeing you on the Erudition Network. Thank you.